The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz along with former Oshkosh Mayor and City Councilwoman Melanie Bloechl. We're taping this show on Thursday, the 26th of August, approximately 1 week and 1 day after a town hall meeting was held, where citizens were invited to come and speak about their feelings and their views on changing the form of government. At the council meeting of the Oshkosh Common Council just 2 nights ago, a change, albeit small, in fact did occur, and joining us to talk about that this evening as well as other city issues is Councilman Paul Esslinger. Paul, always a pleasure to have you.
Always a
welcome
pleasure to be
back.
on. Thank you.
Well, let's talk about where we got to the other night, and then we'll we'll talk a little about how we got there.
It reminds me of a Beatles song, and I know Melanie likes that. It reminds me of The Long and Winding Road. As you two know, there's been several proposals, several times for discussion on this. I had a proposal, Councilmember Peschel had a proposal, Councilmember Tower had a proposal, and as you stated, you know, I held a town hall meeting and a workshop with the City Council. The workshop was designed to inform council members on the different forms and what they can do, because there was some concerns by council members when the other proposals came up that they may not have understood fully what was before them or residents, which they're right, I guess. And then the town hall meeting. So we had that, and then we had the town hall meeting shortly thereafter where citizens could come and join in the debate, because at council workshops there is no citizen debate. And so at the workshop there was a brief questionnaire that people filled out with 6 or 7 questions on there.
At the town hall meeting.
I'm sorry, at the town hall meeting, that's correct. And what ultimately came out from the town hall meeting, what the people wanted was a part-time mayor like we have now, that's elected at large, that would serve on the Plan Commission, and we would have the same type of elections. One of the things I had in my proposal was numbered seats, and the folks that came to that meeting didn't like that proposal. So what I brought forward is what they said they wanted at that town hall meeting. And then 2 days ago, again, we're taping this on a Thursday, 2 days ago, the council had before it the elements of the town hall meeting. It was amended to remove the 3-year term of the mayor to 2-year term, and the Plan Commission was dropped.
And the veto power.
And the veto power
that was dropped also.
Right, that's
something
correct.
that people have clearly said they wanted, not just at the town hall meeting, but on our website, folks that we've talked to on the street, folks you've talked to on the street, folks that other citizens have talked to
I think even on the Oshkosh Northwestern had a poll, an online
Absolutely.
poll.
And you know, people can say what they want about online polls, that they're stacked or whatever, but you know, my argument always has been and will continue to be that, you know, if people can stack it one way, the opposition can certainly stack it the other way.
Well, that's absolutely true.
I guess it's just who's more passionate about their own beliefs and feelings. And frankly, I don't think that there's that many people just sitting there clicking every day, or however many times you can vote on the Northwestern's poll. I don't buy that. So what do you think about where we're at now with basically just the ability to elect a figurehead, ceremonial, parade-leading, ribbon-cutting mayor?
Well, I think
Hey, be gentle.
Yeah,
on this,
Melanie was
Charles.
one of those, exactly. Well, I think
tendinitis.
it's a bittersweet situation. It's leaps and bounds, believe it or not. It's leaps and bounds because we haven't had the citizens voting for a mayor, if you can
Sure.
believe it, for, I don't know, what is it, Melanie, 50 years or something like
Yeah.
that. So it's certainly a step in the right direction. However, I think it's unfortunate still that the mayor doesn't have any type of power. I think Jim Simmons, one of the individuals that was at the town hall meeting and at the workshop, said that the city of Oshkosh, I think, is one of 9 or 10 left in the state of Wisconsin with the type of government that we have here. So it seems that we're behind the times a little bit. But if this is the step that we need to take, then so be it.
Well, precisely, and if it doesn't get us to where we need to eventually be, then it has to be a two-pronged approach. And I said this on the radio when they asked me about it, because I was the spokesman for Citizens for Representative or Responsible Government. They've said it wrong so many times. They've got me saying it wrong now. But representative government. Since I am that group spokesperson, they asked me where we go from here, and I essentially said, the same thing that we've kind of talked about privately, and that's that if things don't get to a point where they're improving, then we need to A, look at getting some decent candidates running for city council in the
Sure.
spring, and B, perhaps look at coming back with another petition drive, and this time seeing it through to fruition, because after all, the only reason that it was dropped before, as we all at this table know, despite some of the comments from certain citizens at city council meetings, that it was dropped so that we could have the town hall meeting and everything else.
Right, and
So-
as I stated before, I think one of the things that I needed to realize myself, and I did that, it was unfortunately too late, is when I had my own proposal before the city council. I was thinking of the phone calls that I got and correspondence that I got up to that point, but then I thought, if you really want to have a gauge of what the city wants, invite them to a meeting to discuss that. Because, I heard things over the last 4 years based upon flooded basements, based upon how wide their road was, based
Yeah.
upon, just a number of things, and they were upset about the way we had it now. So I thought it would be appropriate to bring in the residents, and those residents got to vote. And that's the main reason, is because we needed to have the people speak, and they did.
Well, you know what I want to know, Paul, is how does it feel to have a big old target painted on your backside for doing nothing more than being a real leader? You've actually raised the bar as far as being a community leader. The council had said that they didn't feel as though they had enough information, and I'll tell you, in my term on the council, I heard that terminology so much, honest to God, I could have horked. Okay? Don't have enough information, need more information. Well, it's incumbent upon them to do some homework, I realize that, but, so you say, okay, let's do this workshop. We do this workshop, right? You. And you get people to come, and you get them, the experts in the fields that have the right pedigree, the right degrees, so everybody's happy, And then you have the town hall meeting. Then you get the grand pleasure of coming before the city council, once again bringing this proposal forward after you've done all this background work. And you get citizens coming up there saying, Paul Esslinger, you dirty dog, you blah, 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 and they do nothing but personally attack you, tell you that you're not competent or qualified, and I'm paraphrasing because we don't want to get into
Don't get
direct
yourself into
quotes.
trouble, right?
Yeah, this is not a direct quote. Maybe we should write a disclaimer across the bottom of the screen again. But basically just pummeling the life out of you because for whatever reason, and each one of these individuals has had their own history with you. You don't go to this kind of trouble if you don't have some background here.
Yeah.
And I know because I've been through it myself. I know of what I speak here. And it's personal attacks. Then we pick up the paper this morning and we get another guy who says, you need to get over it, Paul. It's just all because you weren't elected mayor.
Well, let's talk about those.
Yeah.
Mr. Mike Hayes is a neighbor of yours. He has come before the council on a few different occasions that I can recall in recent history. And he's always wagging his finger in your face, basically,
Right.
over this, that, and the other. Why don't you share with the viewing audience exactly what his displeasure with you really comes down to?
Well, we don't
Well, at
have
least
that
the
kind
one,
of time,
I
yeah,
was gonna
but
say at least one of them that would make any kind of
to,
sense.
I guess, kind of condense it, there was a road project on Burnwood Drive, which Mr. Hayes' property abuts. And it was in poor shape, and I brought forward to the council for Burnwood Drive to be repaved. And some of the neighbors liked it, some of them didn't. If you talk about the whole neighborhood, not just the ones on Burnwood Drive, but a majority of the neighbors actually wanted it done. And so I brought that forward, and Mr. Hayes lost that battle. And so, in my opinion, he has an axe to grind, and this is his avenue. The thing that I found very troubling about Mr. Hayes' comments were not so much the personal attacks. I mean, Melanie, you know, you get that. I mean, that comes along with the job. But the thing that he said is the council members should be the ones to elect the mayor. That's baffling. You know, if you're going to use that logic, because his argument was that council members know more about the mayor position. If that's true, and you want to use that logic, then we should not have council elections. Anytime a council member wants to leave the council should get together
And just
pick
select
a person
somebody.
and say, the seven of us know better about this council than the citizens do. We should put someone up there.
We'll just
And
pick
of course,
them for you out of the community.
and,
We'll
if,
just pick 'em.
and if you even suggested doing something like that, you'd be run out of town on a rail. And so, you know, a mayor's position, the one that I would like to have, an actual mayor that had some power, could get things done. And God forbid that we have citizens that can actually vote for someone like that. So when you hear arguments like that 7 people should elect a mayor, not the people, the city of Oshkosh, that's troubling. But to answer your question, Melanie, the X on the back, again, you know,
It's
when
a big old
yeah,
target.
But you know, the personal attacks are troubling. For me, they really don't bother me that much. It's, you know, my mom and my wife read and see this stuff, and it troubles
Sure.
them more than me. It doesn't really bother me.
It is. It's very hard on them.
But you know, the misinformation that goes along with it, people trying to insert their personal opinion and trying to intertwine it with what they feel the facts are. You're talking about why we stopped the drive. They try to intertwine their personal opinions with misinformation. And that's actually what I have the most trouble with.
Well, and then
Yeah.
too, they get up there, some of these citizens, they get up there, and, you know, despite claiming that they've read the proposals,
They don't know
which,
what they're talking about.
no, they really don't, because they start suggesting that that the numbered seats is district representation. Clearly, it is not. It never was, never would have been. It's a completely different thing.
Well-
And it said that these people were elected at large. Now, where do you get from elected at large to district representation in an aldermanic form of government?
But see, that's part of the political game, Cheryl. I mean, when you don't like something, you throw those bombs like that.
Well, I know, but
we had
it's
our own
so
mayor.
untrue.
We had our own mayor do that a few meetings ago. When I was talking about spending money, Mayor Harris came unglued, and he said, "Mr. Esslinger, you voted for more money being spent in the city than any of us. You voted for a $26 million municipal facility." And he told me, he lectured me, that I needed to get my facts straight before I opened my mouth. Well, the fact of the matter is, I did not vote for a $26 million facility. Melanie, you were on the council at the time. We voted for a study of the facility. So if you want to throw the bombs to get people off a track, that's what you do. I mean, and then you get people on your side.
But I will tell you, for Mr. Mayor Harris's edification, if I were on that council today, I would have supported a $26 million municipal complex, which would have included a fire department, a police department, and a city hall, long before I would have spent the millions of dollars that they have in a downtown, because it was my opinion, and continues to be my opinion, that the work of the city council is that to maintain the major infrastructure, making sure we have police, fire, ambulance, garbage pickup, and we stop nailing people with all these user fees and things, and do what it is that our charge is, and that is to provide essential services, not the frou-frou stuff when you can't do the essential stuff first. The frou-frou comes after you've actually been able to make sure all this other stuff is done. But instead, you know, and you were one of them that supported buying the public safety building, which is, and this is my opinion, of course, a crap heap. Okay? You got one floor that works. One. You got no air conditioning unit in it. You're going to have to pay to put new air conditioning, heating in it because of the way it's piped over there. The second floor used to be a jail, so you got bars all over. That's not going to be able to be used. So you have one floor that's actually usable space, and most of that is going to be taken up with the courts. So tell me, City Council, how does that benefit us in alleviating our space crunch? Not gonna.
Well, you know, the reality is when you try to keep taxes down and you're spending it on frivolous projects, when the city staff and a space needs study was saying that space is needed now and will be needed in the future, you know, sitting in my chair, we're not going to get the municipal center. That's, you know, and quite frankly, I don't even think I would vote for that today because it's too much money and we can't afford it. This was the relief valve. So it was almost, I almost got to the point where I've got to start actually voting for the infrastructure things that we need and run the risk of actually raising taxes than not doing it, having a space crunch, and having problems at City Hall with the staff not knowing where they're going to go from one day to the
Correct.
next. So,
but the thing that I have a problem with is that these are all Band-Aid approaches. You know, at best, you're putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. And, you know, when I hear citizens talking, and they're talking to you about how, you know, this is a personal thing with you, and you were PO'd because you didn't get to be mayor. Let's just go back a little bit to that, because this kind of all folds into all of this that's been happening and why there was this movement to go to a change of government. In listening to people when I was on the council, when I was the mayor, moving to when you've been on the council and you have been getting these phone calls. I don't think people really, really understand what being a council member entails. It isn't, you know, meeting every other Tuesday night.
and it's fun and games. And
gee whiz, you go through this agenda and bing, 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 it's all done. When people feel as though you're approachable, as they do with you, you are getting 20, 30 phone calls a night sometimes. I had an answering machine. I couldn't get back to half the phone calls I wanted to. And when you do return phone calls, it's not a 5-minute response time.
no.
You know, you're sometimes spending half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, maybe better, depending on what the issue is. You're going to people's homes. You're going into their neighborhoods. You're going to see what's going on. Plus, you have committee assignments. So, like when Mr. Hayes had said something about, well, the 7 council members know you best. Well, let me tell you something. I served with a lot of different council members in 12 years, and I don't think there was any single one of them who could say that they knew me.
Right.
From the 2 meetings a month and my committee assignments. You are a different person on the council dais than you are in your day-to-day life. You are required to be different. Your
Yes.
thought processes must be different. You have to assimilate information differently. You are required to put on very different hats. So
Yes.
to make this stretch that these so-called 6 other people know you so well,
It's
I don't-
ridiculous.
I can't even imagine. That would be kind of like saying, well, you know, I go to work 2 days out of the month, and the people that see me for maybe, 4 hours? Because let's face it, your council meetings are lasting, on average, maybe hour, hour and a half, tops.
Well, and I'll take it even one step further than that, Mel. You know, I agree completely. I think it's the citizens who know the council people the best. They are the ones who have probably more contact with council members than the fellow council members do. They are the ones who see you come out to their neighborhoods, who see you taking an avid interest in what is going on with a project here or a development situation over there. They're the ones who see these things, you know, and who's to say that they're even calling some of these other council members? Burke Tower, B Tower, to hear him talk, he doesn't really get that many phone calls. And so how does that necessarily make him a better person on that council, a better representative of the people, simply because these other people sitting next to him vote like he does.
Well, and you make a good point, and I would just to go a little further with that is, that's why I brought all of this forward in a town hall meeting, is so when we go to the polls, we get to color in the circle that we like for the person that's running. And we can all make our determinations on who good council members are, or presidents, or...
It's all just an opinion.
It's your opinion, but on election day, all of the people together get to make that opinion. And when I brought stuff forward to the council for consideration, for the council makeup, we weren't there Tuesday night to discuss the makeup of it, because we had done that ad nauseum. We all knew that. We all had the meetings on that. This simply was to talk about whether it should be put on a referendum or not.
Right, not to discuss the merits.
And I made a statement, there's a gal that came up from the League of Women Voters, and I want to make this perfectly clear. She came up and she said, we like the form of government, and that's great. And I want to make perfectly clear, I wasn't trying to tell her she couldn't talk about that at the council meeting, because there were elements. The council was actually discussing the elements. But I was saying that our main purpose here tonight, it was a resolution to put on a November ballot. We were discussing the merits of putting something on a ballot or not. That was the main purpose. So I just wanted to make that. I wasn't saying she couldn't. Of course she could do that. But the main purpose was to talk about putting something on a November ballot. So when the people went to the polls, they all got to determine whether they liked it or not, and their voice should be heard.
And still, that right was taken away from us by, basically Councilman Tower, who, amended this thing down to practically nothing. That right to have that voice was taken away from us,
Well,
even though we have a small voice that can be exercised in November. It was interesting because after the town hall meeting last week, Mark Harris was outside City Hall, and he was talking to us, and he said, well, 55, 60 people, that's hardly a mandate. Well,
First, he argued that there were that many people there.
yeah, he did argue that point. But sorry, here they all are, all the forms are right here, and nobody
was there, he
stacked
could've
the
come.
deck. Well, he was sitting way up in front, so he
Yeah.
couldn't see anyone behind him. But in any event, after he argued that point, then he said, well, 55, 60 people, that's hardly a mandate. Well, that may be true. However, he had no problem whatsoever using 300 or 400 people surveyed out of the entire city to bring forward legislation on a smoking ban. That also I wouldn't call a mandate. The only way you're going to get a true read on what people want and really find out what the mandate is put the damn thing on a ballot and let people decide. And when they circle in the ovals on election day and they run them through the automated counter, then you know what the mandate is. And they're simply afraid to do that, and that's why your proposal both times was amended down. Well, it wasn't amended at all the first time, but it was tossed out on its ear, and this one was amended down to basically nothing.
Well, you know what? It's interesting that we keep talking about mandates and one of the things that they had talked about that night, because we were standing outside, and Kevin McGee was there, Shirley Broadbender Maddox, Mr. Harris, myself, yourself, and Cheryl, all standing out there. And first Mr. Harris argued that there wasn't as many people there as we said that was there.
Right.
And I quickly corrected him because I actually had counted the room and was one of the people handing out the surveys.
Not only that, but if I can just interject, they actually had to open up the curtain to expand it into the back part of the room.
Correct.
By a few rows.
So, and Mr. McGee concurred with me that indeed that many people were most assuredly there. Because evidently Mr. McGee actually pays attention to how much the room can hold, unlike Mr. Harris. But anyway, the other thing that was being bantered about is that, well, this isn't really a very good random selection. And I said, I guess the only question I have for you guys is that when you put out there that you're inviting an entire community to participate in a town hall meeting, how else do you get the random selection but to open the invitation up to whomever in your community would like to participate?
It can't get any more random than that.
Well, but Mr. McGee actually made a very good point. He said the only way that you can actually get a random mandate is to put it on the ballot, Mr. Harris.
That's right.
Yep.
And so Kevin McGee concurred that the only way to really get it on a random overall feel for this is to put it on the ballot and let people decide. But we talk about, was 55 enough people? Would we have liked to have more people?
Sure.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, I was really frustrated in that room that night because from 12 years on the council and still getting phone calls from doing this show, I still get phone calls, like as though I'm still on the council. And one of the analogies I've made is, God help us if when our forefathers were getting ready for the revolution, and they said, you know what, all the Minutemen meet at the central haystack in the middle of the town, okay? Bring rifles, muskets, whatever you got, we're taking these guys down. And the only people that showed up was us.
We'd be in serious
Hello?
trouble.
We'd still be a British colony.
Yeah.
It frustrates me because I know people are upset about how money is being spent. I know that they're frustrated. I know because they're telling me.
Yeah.
You don't make this stuff up. But you can't be upset from your living room couch. I know it's tough for people. Sometimes they're working 2 and 3 jobs just to make but you know what? 5 minutes of your time to voice your opinion, you got to put it out there. You got to do something. You can't let everybody else carry your water for you. It won't work. There's power in numbers. And you really, because then you got people like Mark Harris going, well, I'm not really sure.
Well, I think the most insulting thing that Mayor Harris said, and he said it 3 times now, he said it twice at a council meeting and once outside when we were talking to him, is he said that this should not be on a November ballot. And his logic is that in the November ballot, people are going to vote for the president and for state elections. And so, I'm paraphrasing, put the disclaimer on the bottom of the screen now. And so, when people go to the go to the ballot in November, they'll be completely freaked out because they see something on there that's local, and they'll have no idea what that is, and they haven't been educated on it. Therefore, we should put it on an April ballot.
No, Mr. Harris is playing games. Let me tell you what I think Mr. Harris is all about. And this is strictly my opinion, of course.
Disclaimer.
Yeah, because God knows we don't want to insult anybody. He wanted that on an April ballot because he knows as well as any thinking human being that April elections are poor turnout elections. Mm-hmm. If we are lucky in this community, we get anywhere from 10 to 20%.
Right.
In a good election.
Right.
Okay? So how better not to have a strong mandate for the very thing that you despise, and that is giving people the choice to choose who your mayor is going to be, than to put it on some rinky-dink election that maybe people won't be turning out for. But a presidential election, now you tell me something. In these economic times, are you telling me that he honestly believes that this community and other communities in the United States, let's just stick to Wisconsin, okay, specifically Oshkosh, are not paying attention to local politics, state politics, and national politics? We don't have jobs, we don't have health care, and we don't know where our next meal might be coming from, and he's thinking we're not paying attention to what's going on. But we for sure wouldn't pay attention to something that's right at our back door.
Well, I would go further and argue that if you stacked up local, state, and federal issues, the people of the city of Oshkosh, because that's what we're talking about, the people of the city of Oshkosh could answer questions with a more educated answer about local politics than they could state or federal.
Mm-hmm. And that includes a change of government.
Absolutely.
To whatever degree it may or may not be.
Absolutely.
Well, and because, Paul, you've done such a good job in bringing it to them. You brought it to them in a workshop. You brought it to them in town hall. You've been on the radio. You've been talking to anybody and everybody who will give you a chance to try to make sure that everyone has had a fair opportunity to ask the questions. I got to ask you though, What was the comment? Why this thing was watered down? What's everybody so afraid of?
Well, that's a question you would have to ask them.
That
but
wasn't discussed that night.
Mr. Tower just said he didn't like it.
He wasn't
Well,
comfortable with it.
Yeah, it's not up to him to decide whether he's comfortable with it, whether he likes it, whether he understands it. You know, this is to put it on a ballot to let the people decide. You know, see if they like it, see if they're comfortable with it. That's the only thing that I heard that he said.
Well, okay. Well, my thing is that, you know, I've been listening to people talk, and, you know, I listened to Mark Schumer. What did he say? If it isn't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, he said that on 2 different occasions.
This is crybaby tactics.
No, the spoiled child syndrome.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Spoiled child syndrome. I guess I'm not really sure what that means, because would that mean that Frank Tower was a spoiled child and Brian Peschel was a spoiled child and you were a spoiled child? Because there have been 3 different proposals brought forth.
That's correct.
Mr. Allen, was it Mr. Allen who said that you, in the editorial today, something about the fact that you had wasted the time of Councilmember Tower and Councilmember Peschel by bringing this forward, and you needed to kind of get over it?
Yep.
Well, so then did Mr. Peschel waste your time and everybody else's time? And did Mr. Tower waste your time and everybody else's time?
Well,
Is
see,
it a waste
well-
of time to bring legislation forward that you think might
Yeah.
actually improve the lives of the people that you represent?
And maybe I need to make an apology here and now. I mean, to those people, to the people out in TV land that are offended that I brought something to the council so the citizens of Oshkosh could vote on it and have their voice, I apologize to them. But I'm hoping that most of the residents of the city of Oshkosh can appreciate that something comes forward where they have a voice. If they don't like this, if they don't want to vote for a mayor, I would encourage them strongly to come out in November and say, I don't want to vote for the mayor of the city of Oshkosh. If you want to vote for the mayor, I strongly encourage you to come out and say, yes, I do. I mean, it's really that simple. I don't know what all of the nonsense is about.
Well, in fairness, too, one of the things that I have to say that I was impressed about, and I don't get very impressed by the Fab Five, but every single council member showed up at that town hall
I was
meeting.
very impressed with that.
Yep.
Every single one of them showed up. Now, they didn't all stay from beginning to end, but they all showed up. They all were courteous and listened to the presenters, listened for as long as they would, some of them could stay, to what the citizenry had to say. I thought it was interesting that the take from the newspaper was something about, and again, paraphrasing, something to the fact that there were all past council members and present council members or city leaders of some
And
sort.
other elected officials.
And other elected officials. And so, again, making reference to the fact that this wasn't a good cross-section of people. Well, if we use Dr. Hayes' analogy that 7 council members are incredibly knowledgeable and they can pick from amongst themselves as to who makes the best leader. If you use that same analogy, would it not make sense then to presume that a room full of past, present, and future hopeful leaders could determine what was actually in the best interests of the city?
You're
And
absolutely right.
by virtue of doing that, those surveys came back and said, we want an elected
Yeah.
mayor with veto power on the plan commission.
Yep.
The educated people at that meeting
Yeah.
decided that they wanted a mayor with veto power. Not only did we have the 7 council members there, we had past council member McGee.
Yep.
We had past council member and mayor Delantonia there. We had school board member Bowen there. We had school board member Ben Schneider II was there. And, some hopefuls, I'm sure.
Sure.
So these are the educated people. These are the people in the know, and this is what they came up with. So,
Yeah, and that's not to say everybody that we mentioned just voted or took the survey and said this is what they particularly wanted. But the overall consensus from the composite of all those surveys said, the number said, we want to be able to elect our mayor directly. We want that mayor to have veto power, and we want them to be on the plan commission. And yet, our city council came back and said, well, you know, I think we know better. Well, okay, so I'm not understanding what Mr. Hayes is saying. He's saying a room full of people who decided that this is how it should go. These very same people get into a different room and they change their mind. I would contend for Dr. Hayes that he would see very different people if you took them from the council dais into an executive session. They are very different people from one room to the next. You will hear very different things.
Yes, you would.
And so to make these sweeping analogies that these 6 people can determine what your worth is, we had a council at one point when Mr. Bob Youngworth, who was one of the most popularly elected city council members of all time, very, very popular.
But he wasn't elected mayor, he was...
Correct. But he was one of the top vote-getting
Yes, that's
city
correct.
council members of all times. And it was his turn to become mayor. He became mayor for a year, and then a coup d'etat occurred, and they wanted a sweep in leadership because they didn't like that kind of blue-collar feel to it.
Right.
He was too common. They
Right.
wanted a whole different approach. So the coup d'etat occurred. Now, did that mean that the people of Oshkosh, who overwhelmingly supported Bob Youngworth in the polls, would not have wanted him as mayor? I beg to differ with you. I think they were very comfortable with his leadership. I think they were very comfortable with how he represented them. I think they really liked what he had to do and say. Now, did that mean as a council member sitting with Bob Youngworth, that we always agreed? Absolutely not. But I respected what he brought to the table and the differences. Just like I did with John Dell'Antonia. John Dell'Antonia and I could not have been 2 more different people. Did I like him when we first started? No, and he didn't like me either, at all. But as we learned to work together, we had a strong respect for one another. Did we have vehement disagreements and would we go fisticuffs? You betcha, because that was my job, just like it's your job, Paul. So these people who come out and say that this has become personal for you to somehow gain an advantage, they don't get it because they've never done this. They don't know what it takes to have the courage and the tenacity to stand up, say, here I am, this is what I stand for, this is what I'm going to do, and let people throw rocks from the cheap seats.
Well, and you know, part of the political game is when you don't have enough to say about the substance of the matter, you bring up the personal stuff. Mr. Hayes, before he walked away from the council dais, said something to the effect of, I can or I will come back to this council and let you know why Paul Esslinger should not be a mayor. I can only imagine what he's going to come back with. You know, some goofy, you know, I did this or I'm going to do that or...
Well, I got to tell you, I'm actually surprised I was able to accomplish anything, because when I had my tenure on the council, let's see, we had South Park Avenue, Jackson
Oh, my
Street.
God.
I mean, that I wasn't lit on fire in effigy at any given corner of the city is
You might
nothing.
have been and just didn't know it.
And actually, I think somebody did call me once and say that I was being hung out in someone's front yard in effigy, wasn't it? We did a streetwise, they did sidewalks or something, it was out north of town. And somebody said, you really need to go by because you're being hung in effigy. Now, can you imagine taking your kid for a little ride and there's mommy? You know.
On that note, you know, I just want to touch on something else here about this elected mayor thing, Paul. You know, what we keep hearing over and over and over again, from ourselves included, is that we want someone in the position of mayor who's going to be accountable to the people.
Yeah.
Now, I think we need to make the point, and I'd like you to comment on this, that this mayor, while it may be elected, is not going to be an accountable mayor. No more accountable than any of the other 6 city council members.
Nope.
Why don't you address that for us and explain to people why?
Yeah.
Because I think people are going to be very surprised
Yeah. come
next April when they're electing a mayor
Yeah.
and that mayor has no power to do
Right.
squat.
And, well, I'll kind of reference what the two people that come to the council meetings all the time say, and he's Ken Bender and Gordon Dooley, who argue that we should have a mayor that is responsible, that is accountable. And I guess basically under the proposal that I had to have a mayor that was elected with a veto power, that person is accountable and very responsible. What we have now is a mayor exactly like we have now, gets one vote on the council, cannot veto anything, and seriously just has one vote.
Can't bring about any development.
No, there's no development. Things will march on, basically as they do now. So if you want to call the mayor, if this passes and we have a mayor that's elected by the people, yeah, you got to elect him or her, but that person has no more or less power than any one of the other 6 council members.
It's all title.
Yeah.
It's all pomp and circumstance. You will have a mayor that may have tendinitis from doing this, but nothing that does anything like this. Like, yes, you're going to get it cleaned up,
Right.
The other point that I want to address, and then maybe we can touch on a few other city things, is, there's been an awful lot of backlash against you, as we've kind of been talking about here. And the common theme that runs through all of these comments and rhetoric is that the only reason, as Mel said before, that you brought this forward is because you are ticked off that they did not select you as mayor in April. And I'd like you to talk about that, because absolutely nothing could be further from the truth.
Part of it is true. Was I ticked? I wasn't ticked off that I didn't get mayor. I believe Mr. Harris, if you do the timely thing,
Yeah.
Mr. Harris was in line for that. The deputy mayor, I was ticked. I thought that was disrespectful. If you're using the logic of time and grade on the city council.
But is that why that you've been doing all this?
No,
That's the point I'm trying to make.
I had been on this show about a year ago or so, and I had been talking about that. I talked to, it was Mayor Hentz at the time, year and a half, 2 years ago, talking about having a mayor that can actually do something, and because he teaches politics and he was one of the speakers. Talked to him about the different forms and what can be done. So, this again, when you play the political game and you don't have anything to talk about as substance, you throw a bunch of stuff against the wall and hope it sticks, and that's basically what's happening.
Okay. Did you have anything else on this subject?
Oh, I have lots on this subject, but I don't think we have that much time.
I want to talk about a few other things. This is the first summer now that Pollock Pool's been closed, and as we tape this, the kids are just a little less than a week from going back to school. By the time this airs, they'll be a couple days away from going back to school. So we've survived the summer without a pool, but I have never heard so much flack about the fact that a city of this size and stature does not have a municipal pool. And of course, we've said that for some time, but now, the newspaper's getting involved in the act, and, a lot of citizens are starting to comment now because they're feeling the effects.
Sure.
What, if anything, is the city planning with respect to Pollock Memorial Pool?
What's happening right now is I saw a Parks Commission meeting. The Pollock Pool subject came up, and I believe it was Councilmember Peschel asked if there can be a study that could be undertaken to find out what it would cost to just fill it in, what it would cost to bring it back, and how much it's going to cost to run it again. So I believe that should be in Mr. Stefani's hands, the Parks Director. Should be bringing that forward, and hopefully we'll have that by our budget meetings, which would be in probably October. We'll have our budget meeting, so the council will have a good understanding of if we're going to keep it, if we're going to put it back to the way we had it, or if we're going to fix it up. Hopefully we'll have the spectrum of what can happen with Pollock Pool.
Do you think that you would support reopening it?
Well, I don't know. I would love to have it reopened. The city manager says, well, one of the reasons we had to close it is because the attendance was dwindling over the years. Well, of course it was. When you don't maintain something, your attendance is going to go down. It's kind of like, I always correlate things to cars. I just bought a brand new vehicle and I'm excited about it and I love driving. It's still got the new car smell. Well, if I don't do anything with it in 4 or 5 years, I probably won't be happy with it and I want to get rid of it, toss
Sure.
it. So, if we want to have a municipal pool of that size, we need to put in the budget things to maintain it also, and we didn't do that. And part of the other problem is not only the city of Oshkosh has money directed towards the pool, but the school system also has money in there. So it's, you know, what happens if one wants to do it and the other one doesn't want to? Does one completely take jurisdiction over it, and you know, how do you settle those issues also?
Well, I guess that's where leadership and responsibility by every single one of the people on the city council dais comes into play. Is there should have been, and I'm talking past and present councils, you know, there should have been, as far as I'm concerned, money being put away to maintain some of these things. I mean, if you're just going to throw caution to the wind and not worry about what's going to happen come that rainy day, then you're not going to have your infrastructure in place to weather the storm when monsoon season comes. And all of a sudden, you know, we've got money that we can shove into Riverside Park thanks to all of us citizens, and, you know, about a fourth or a fifth of it from the Leach Foundation, but we can't put forth $100,000 or $200,000 to fix up a pool. Why was money never put aside to maintain some of these things?
Well, first of all, I don't think that there wasn't ever money put aside. I think that what you have to remember is when you have a structure like Pollock Pool that was built, I believe, in the early 60s, that infrastructure, the qualifications for insurance, structurally, things change significantly in 40 and 50 years down the road as to what you can fix. Pumps, filtration systems, clarification systems, just a plethora of things that go along with running a facility of that size. Not to mention how the actual structure was built from a lifeguard perspective. You know, there was actually, 3 pools there if you looked at it. You had the little baby pool on the outside of the fence, the little wee pool on the inside, and then the bigger pool. So from a personnel standpoint, there was a great deal of personnel that was needed on site in order to facilitate the proper viewing of all of these young children under their care. So that became a very expensive venture. However, one of the things that I think, you know, I take responsibility for is that we tried to be so incredibly frugal all the time. We bubblegummed and bailey wired everything back together forever. You know, you have to remember when I started under while Bill Free was still in the administration. Our water treatment plant literally was bubblegum and bailey wired together.
Yeah, see, there's another thing. I mean,
it was an incredible undertaking to try to facilitate the kinds of funds. Our philosophy at that time was not to pound money into the quote-unquote general fund as our savings account. It was, we wanted to put that money back in the people's pockets for an economic stimulus. Let them have their money, let them decide, let them drive the market. Well, that was pretty naive. I mean, I could see the error of my ways now down the road, but at that time it made pretty good sense because during that period of time, you know, we hadn't built up a big general fund. There were things that we needed to do. So we were pretty frugal and probably to our own detriment, frugal. But I don't want to go as far as to say that there was never any money set aside for Pollock Pool. Was there enough money set aside? Probably not, or I don't think that we would be in the dire straits that we are now. And unfortunately, a council like Paul's kind of gets that trickle-down effect. If it's been neglected in, you know, a decade prior to you getting on the council, you know, it's really not these guys' fault that now all of a sudden we've got $300,000 worth of repairs. Where the hell are we going to get the money?
I think, you know, the concept of setting money aside is really kind of a misnomer, unless you're talking about our general fund, which now is at $6 or $7 million. So putting money aside for emergency situations, we've done a great job with that.
We didn't before, but we have now.
But, you know, things in the budget, we don't set money aside for new police vehicles. We don't set money aside for new fire equipment and anything else. It's called the budget. You know, the department heads say, I need X amount of dollars for this machinery or these vehicles, and they ask the council and we bond for it. So, I mean, that's
the difficulty
that's
is too is, and help me here, Paul, if I'm going off in the wrong direction. But this is one of those commodities, Pollock Pool, that really needs to be a revenue generating source. If you are not generating enough revenue to pay off the bond, you know, you've got X amount of dollars that you have to borrow in order to make this infrastructure work.
Right.
Make sure the diving boards are operational, the filtration system works. So you borrow money from the bank and you fix all this stuff. Well, then you have people buying tickets to get in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if those ticket costs or the attendance doesn't come to pay off that bond,
You're in trouble.
you've got a serious problem, because now you've got a deficit situation.
That's what's happening in Omro. They are losing money hand over fist in Omro with their municipal pool. And not only that, but their debt payments go up. And the last couple of years of their debt payments are absolutely huge.
Well, sure.
So there's people in Omro that are screaming now that their taxes are high because of that, and they're just not getting the people to pay off that debt.
Well, and when you don't have people working, that's going to become an even bigger problem.
Yeah.
You know, these recreational things are going to go by the wayside. If you don't have people in good jobs,
Well, that's
with-
unfortunate.
you know, it's really sad. Do I think we should have this pool operational again? Yeah, I think we owe it to this community to do at least that much. But again, you know.
But we can have recreational things. We can't have anything for our city's children, but we can have recreational things for people down along the river to listen to music. You know, I mean, this is where the common
Priorities.
sense stuff and priorities
And-
are gone.
And I'll politely remind you that the Pollock Pool funding for the city of Oshkosh was $30,000 or $35,000. Remind you that the funding that we give the Grand Opera House is about $70,000.
Yeah. And it's a couple blocks away from where a new band shell will be. So, competing entities. Okay.
The smoking ban thing.
Oh no.
Not again.
Well, and we don't have time to get into the whole thing, but suffice it to say, there was a snafu down at City Hall, which is going to cause this election to probably become null and void. Now, the city has been quoted in the paper as saying that precautions have been put in place, measures have been taken to ensure that something like this doesn't happen again. And just real quickly for the edification of the viewers, the public notice of the referendum question was to have been, under state election laws, posted 28 days prior to the election. It did not get posted until the day before the election, violation of state election laws, and therefore throwing the baby out with the bathwater, basically. So what has been put in place? How can we be assured that this is not going to happen again?
I've not gotten any memo from Mr. Wallink on the mechanisms that were put into place on that, so I can't answer that
Is
question.
that something you could find out for us and email that to us so we can put that on our website?
I'll certainly ask.
Okay,
Sure.
great. Go ahead.
I'm on, huh? I had nothing to say, which was really kind of scary. I was busy listening.
You've always got something to say.
I guess I want to say one thing. I guess when you take people to task, sometimes you have to compliment them. Although I wasn't real excited that my proposal got watered down, I really do want to thank Councilmember Peschel, Councilmember Tower, and Councilmember Maddox for at least saying the people should be able to vote on something. And it's unfortunate that our mayor, Mr. Castle, and Mr. B. Tower couldn't see clear to letting people decide if they wanted to have an elected mayor or not. That's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
What else is going on with Riverside Park right now? Obviously, that ended up, the first bid came in higher than what you had originally bonded
Yeah.
for. I know that there's a meeting that's going to be taking place on the 30th, which this is the first day that will air, so by the time this airs for even the first time, that meeting will be over with. But, you know, what is happening with that?
Well, you're right. I mean, the bid came in, and C.R. Meyer got the bid for doing the infrastructure work.
Boy, there's a surprise.
Yeah, and so game on. I mean, we're
Well,
going to go at it.
What I don't understand is C.R. Meyer has been involved in all of these discussions with downtown redevelopment. Phil Martini is actually on the downtown redevelopment committee, for God's sake. So everybody knows how much money is actually available to do this work. And yet now it came in how far over bid?
Well, The council was asked to borrow $1.4 million, which we did. And I think the total bid came in at 2.1 or somewhere thereabouts.
So another $500,000.
Well, yeah, but some of that's going to be from our capital improvements. Not all of that is coming from taxpayer money. Some is coming from capital improvements, and there's, like the Noon Optimist had some money put in there. I think the DNR had some money put in there also. So, but
How much money has come from private and corporate donations in the fundraising campaign?
I don't believe there has been a fundraising campaign. I could be wrong, but to the best of my knowledge,
Could you check on that for
I
us too,
certainly
please?
can. Sure.
Well, you're going to be a busy
Yeah, I'm
guy,
busy.
Mr.
Well, the reason
Esslinger.
the reason I ask is because I covered Neenah politics professionally, and they're doing a Riverside Park project too that is I believe going to be 3-point-something million. They have been fundraising for several months now, and while some of the citizens there are torn as to whether or not this is a good project,
Sure.
they have raised between corporate entities and private donations over $900,000. Now that's roughly a third of what the project is, and so now that they have those commitments, now they're going to let the bids or award the bids in mid-September, and they will start construction at the end of September. Now see,
There's a novel idea.
So you mean to tell me they actually went out to businesses and said, let's get some money first, and then what we've come up with, the remainder the taxpayers can be hit with, and it won't be so hard. Isn't that a novel
well, and
idea?
they're getting grant money too.
Right.
I mean, yes, the taxpayers are going to foot part of the bill, but I don't think that the taxpayers would feel, are going to feel quite as strongly about it or feel it in their pocketbook quite as strongly if they hadn't gotten all this money that they have already gotten.
Yeah, and-
I mean, that just goes to show how things should be done, because here again, you're saying you don't know if there's been any money that's been raised through a fundraising effort.
Certainly wasn't
And,
when I was there.
what is the incentive? Just as you said at the council meeting when this was all being discussed, if you automatically bid or bond for the money, where's the incentive to have anyone donate any money?
That's precisely right.
Well, in keeping with what the council continues to do by not giving people choice, at least the majority anyway. I mean, this is perfect. We
Sure.
don't give you a choice whether you think this is a good idea or not. We're not going to give you a chance to go to referendum with that. We're not going to give you a chance to decide if you want an elected mayor with veto power. We'll give you nothing,
And you'll like it.
and you'll like it.
Well, on that note, let me just say I've liked having you here, Paul. It's always a pleasure, and
Pleasure
thanks,
being here.
thanks for your efforts in getting us
Really,
an elected
really.
mayor to whatever
Thank you.
degree he or she will be able to serve. That's going to do it for this time. For Melanie Bloechl and Paul Esslinger, I'm Cheryl Hentz. Thanks very much for joining us. You take good care, and we'll see you next time. Until then, keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.